Hey, what's up, y'all? And of course, welcome to another Alternative Factuals video. I know it's been like 2 weeks or like 2.5 weeks by the time this video comes out. So, as you already know, I have been I was in the process of moving. For the most part, I'm pretty much settled in. I have everything pretty much set up: my computer, my desk, my monitor, everything. Some small stuff. I have a single box, but it's not a lot of stuff. Just mostly miscellaneous stuff. But anyways, so welcome back. We are finally officially back into rolling things out on a weekly basis. Okay, so this is what I have in store for today. I made a post saying that, Black Lightning will eventually have, his own team to some degree in the Lightning verse. Now, initially when it first came to Black Lightning, they didn't really have any, any intentions of anytime soon developing or making Black Lightning a part of the original Arrowverse. That wasn't their plan initially, at least not for a little while now. It was going to be at some point, but they was going to give it some time. But obviously we see that they were part of the Crisis event, so obviously they have been merged into the single universe. They actually share the same Earth with the Flash, technically the Arrow, even though Oliver Queen is dead, and all the other superheroes, Supergirl and all that stuff, they all exist on the same planet now. So this is what we're gonna do. Before I dive into any details, the usual, the shtick. I feel a little rusty, by the way. I don't know why. But please leave a like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know your ideas. Let me know anything that you want to see in video format and all that good stuff and all that jazz. And without further ado, let's kind of just get into this. Okay, so with the plans of Black Lightning kind of having his own Lightning verse, so to speak, a lot of people wanted to see that because that would have introduced characters like Static Shock or, Halo, for example, just other characters you would have seen kind of in the Static Shock TV show, those who suffered from the Big Bang, supposedly, which could have just been the second iteration of the Green Light. But like I said, that plan was not necessarily completely scrapped, but I'm pretty sure it's just simply not something that's going to happen the same way that they first thought it would, since they're now officially a part of the Arrowverse. So talking about it now, this is what I'm going to do. This is my suggestion. This is how I think this is going to go down in terms of, them bringing in characters like Static or characters like Rubber Band Man or Ebon, characters like that. If they want to bring in characters like that, this is what they have to do. And this is what I see is the most likely situation when it comes to merging Black Lightning's kind of lore and universe and a lot of the characters he's been a part of or kind of interacted with into this brand new Arrowverse where Black Lightning exists with the other superheroes like the Flash and Superman and Supergirl. So I think they're going to form this covert team that we've seen obviously in the DC Universe app, which is basically the Outsiders. And this is something that's been going on for quite some time now. This is not brand new. The Outsiders team was initially formed by Batman all the way in Outsiders #1. And this team was specifically picked out by Batman simply because these are the people who were the most powerful in very specific ways, or the most intelligent, or sometimes both. Like I said, Black Lightning is one of those people where he definitely has a genius level intellect, as well as he's extremely powerful when it comes to him in the comic books. A lot of people in the Justice League in general actually do fear his power because of what he's capable of, but they don't really focus too much about that on the comic books or even in the TV shows. But basically this is a team that was handpicked by Batman, the most experienced, the most intelligent, the most powerful people in DC Comics, and basically they were designed to make this covert team. And they first came into they made their first appearance in the Brave and the Bold #200 in July of 1983, and was initially created by Mike W. Barr and Jim Aparo. So this is a team that Batman over and over and over again would give them, basically the free run to kind of do missions for him without necessarily being completely attached to the Justice League. But also they still kind of would work hand in hand because a lot of the superheroes that were on the Justice League were well aware of the heroes that were on the Outsiders team, what they were capable of, and why they were powerful. And just so you know, heroes would include like Metamorpho, Black Lightning, obviously, Geoforce, Halo, and Katana. These are people you've seen before in one way or another, either in the Arrow show or Black Lightning the TV show, or you've seen them in the animated series. You've seen them in some way, shape, or form. Geoforce is now obviously Black and Black Lightning because, like I said, they had a close relationship in the comic books. They were really best friends at one point, and then they become like really bad enemies over a disagreement of ideology. But basically you've seen these characters in one way or another, or in multiple forms, in comic books, animated series, or a live action show. So basically, since Black Lightning is black, since Geoforce has officially become a black teenager in Black Lightning himself, we have not seen Metamorpho as of yet. Halo we've seen in the Outsiders, what's the animated show of, I'm gonna say Teen Titans, but it's not really Teen Titans, it's Young Justice, but they turned her into an Iraqi, Middle Eastern teenage girl. So I'm pretty sure if they introduce that in Black Lightning, the TV show, I'm pretty sure they will. She's going to be black or a person of color in some way, shape, or form. Basically, we're going to have pretty much an all-black covert team, or at least mostly black or minority covert team when it comes to Black Lightning and the Outsiders coming into the live action series. Now, the reason why this is extremely important is because, yes, even though Static Shock was not a part of the Outsiders team, this is just a gateway for them to introduce different characters into, like, you know, the whole Black Lightning TV show when it comes to finding out different characters or finding out people who have different abilities and so on and so forth. So this is just mostly just a gateway, especially because Black Lightning was in charge of this team and is in charge of this team till this day. So it's been something that's been consistent over the course of its first introduction into DC Comics. But besides all that, let's kind of just keep things going here. So yes, they're just a gateway for them to introduce characters like that, and I believe that the Outsiders can serve a larger purpose. So let's say, hypothetically, let's say season 4 they introduce the Outsiders. They pretty much have the bare bones foundation of the team, including some characters who are not originally a part of it, but obviously they can make exceptions for the sake of the TV show. Now, let's say they decide to obviously explore the Markovian angle a little bit more, because obviously at some point during the season, they're going to find out that Gravedigger is not only still alive, but he's perfectly fine. He's perfectly well, unless they decide to do something different and say, like, you know, he experienced some sort of damage during that whole explosion and then maybe he like lost his powers or his powers are weakened. But based on what we saw at the end of season 3, it looks like he's perfectly fine. It looks like there's nothing wrong with him. He's going to definitely be a villain for the following season, but just not in the way that we probably think he is. But they're going to explore this Markovian angle and realize that he's probably already had plenty of metahumans in Markovia as is, but also because he was a leader of the Markovian military, he wanted to kind of rack up and gain more metahumans so that way they can become this huge, massive superpower and also be this ultimate form of, I guess, liberation for other metahumans in kind of the mecca for a lot of superpowered beings. So that's what makes that fun. And that can potentially say, like, for example, maybe Static Shock was Markovian, or maybe Static Shock was a kid who actually was in Freeland, or maybe Static Shock was a kid who was born and raised in Freeland, then moved somewhere else, and then eventually was found by the Markovians and brought over to Markovia. That can be a very possible thing. Or what I think is going to happen, what I think is more plausible, more likely based on the scenarios and the situations we were given from the previous 3 seasons, is that Greenlight, basically the whole metagene, the activation of the metagene, and, you know, Gravedigger and his experiment, there has been more than 2 or 3 experiments when it came to Greenlight. Obviously, the first official one on record was the experiment with Gravedigger. His abilities and stuff like that had awakened during a point in time, and then yes, they figured out, yes, this is the person that we need. This is the person who actually was able to stabilize. So at that point, you know, people have been trying to replicate that experiment. Obviously, like I said in another video, where it's kind of like a Captain America kind of thing. But yes, so throughout the course of the beginning of that experiment all the way into the point when Jefferson got his powers, or I would say even up until when, you know, Jennifer and Anissa started to, you know, manifest their powers, because their powers started to manifest around the time that there was this second coming for Freeland when it came to Greenlight and the manifesting abilities, we can definitely say that Freeland was not the only town or the only place where they were experimenting with people of color to figure out who would develop powers. Because as we found out, Brandon was never in Freeland at all. He was actually born with his powers simply because his mother was being experimented on in the womb. So he was born with his powers, meaning it's very much possible that someone who was back in the 60s with Black Lightning, or someone who was back in another experiment in either in Markovia or some other town where Greenlight or some variation of it was present, that it's possible that someone can be born with powers or someone had powers and then they were stable themselves. So and I said this before, Black Lightning isn't the only person who technically is stable, because if I remember, Piranha, who was basically Jennifer's therapist and one who had the mind abilities or the mind powers to kind of go into people's minds and shut down people's minds, she'd have powers and she had no negative side effects, at least not visible on the TV show, meaning she was a stable metahuman herself. So Black Lightning, you have Piranha, who was very much stable. Like I said, Gravedigger was one of the most stable metahumans there was. You had Jennifer and Anissa. It's very much possible that there are other metahumans who are stable, or at least very much stable enough. TC was also relatively stable for the most part. I think he did receive the metahuman cure for that virus that was going around or whatever like that. But in general, his powers were relatively stable for the most part as well. So we do know that there's something about certain people's genetic coding which allows their abilities to be either completely stable, or if they're not completely stable, they're stable enough to the point that it won't immediately kill them as long as they don't overdo their powers. So that's what makes this very interesting. We can definitely find out that there's been other experiments in other places in the world, and that static is just a side effect of being from another one of those places, or being an offspring from someone who was initially experimented on in the initial green light experiments, either from way back in the day, or from the 60s with Jefferson, or could be a part of some in-between experiment that existed that we do not yet know of. But let me know what y'all think about this. Like I said, I think the last one is a lot more plausible because there's a lot of stuff and a lot of information we don't know about the ASA. The only thing we know is that they were in Freeland twice, they were directly involved with Markovia, and that briefcase gave information about Gravedigger, him being the first official metahuman, and his stabilization being the foundation in which a lot of the experiments are starting to take place. So I think the last one is more plausible. Obviously, if y'all come up with something different, I want to know, because like I said, this is a theory making community. We do this about characters, and like I said, I will be covering other black characters like, you know, Falcon and Winter Soldier, because that one's going to be interesting. Actually, if you read the premise for the show, it's actually literally kind of, at least the first season, it's going to be about how America views the fact that a black man took the mantle of Captain America. So that's going to be interesting. But let me know what you think. And if you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you're feeling. Ooh, and I'll see you later on. Peace out.